Hey, good morning, everybody. My name is Lisa Jarrett, and this is part of our 2021 Visiting Artist Lecture Series and Artist Residency Program for KSMoCA. KSMoCA is the Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. School Museum of Contemporary Art, and we're a contemporary art museum inside Dr. MLK Jr. School in Northeast Portland, Oregon. This morning, we are delighted to welcome Master Artist Michael Bernard Stevenson Jr., who will be introduced shortly by Mo. But before we get started there, we wanted to give a warm welcome to our Dr. MLK Jr. School students who are watching via our YouTube live channel. And students, if you have any questions, feel free to put them in that chat on YouTube Live, and we'll make sure that we get those questions to Michael to answer toward the end of the talk. We're so happy that you're able to be here today. And we also want to make sure that we thank everybody at Dr. MLK Jr. School that helps us out and helps coordinate and connect us with our students in the community in our neighborhood. And that includes Principal Jill Sage, Paige Thomas, Nancy Rios, and Michelle Peak, along with so many others. Thank you all so much for your support. And we are really looking forward to hearing a little bit more about Master Artist Michael Bernard Stevenson Jr. from Mo. So Mo, would you be willing to do a little introduction for us?
Yes, Okay. Sorry, something weird just happened. You forgot Mr. Monty. Hi, I'm Mo. I go to Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. School. I'm also the head photographer for KSMoCA. Today I'm introducing Master Artist Bernard Stevenson Jr. Michael Bernard Stevenson Jr. For their third talk in this series. Michael's talk today is called Educate to Liberate. They like to work with young people between ages 4 and 18. Michael believes that empowered and open-minded young people, that's good, are the best way to make sure we have all a sustainable and prosperous future. What does Educate to Liberate mean? I think we'll find out. Welcome, Master Artist Michael Bernard Stevenson Jr. I had to say that. Thank you for being here today, because that's what he wants me to say, so I have to say it.
Thank you so much, Mo. That was a really wonderful introduction. And Mo reminded me I forgot to thank Mr. Monty. So thank you, Mr. Monty. Yes. And I also forgot to welcome and thank my co-founder and co-director, Harold Fletcher, and one of our primary collaborators, Amanda Lee Evans. And they're both here and they help make this work possible. So Mo, thank you for the reminders and for the wonderful introduction. Warm welcome to you, Michael.
Thank you, Go Team. And in usual fashion, I have arrived at the moment of my presentation being ready to show. So I'm super excited about that. And you know, Mo, I don't know, this is direct to you. A, it's interesting to have your bio read. B, I was just at a colloquium yesterday and we did an exercise where people were reading about other people. But when you were talking, I was like finishing my thing. And I was like, wow, that's really right. Keeps you honest writing a bio. Then the people say it later and you're like, okay, I got to do that. Anyway, are you ready? Are we ready? It's now the time.
Yes, it is. And tell us about that hat.
I will do it all again. Maybe some of it later than now, but right now, definitely Educate to Liberate is on the menu. Are you seeing this?
Yes.
Excellent. So this episode of Artist Residence KSMoCA is a bit of a tongue twister, maybe. It's a little bit of a recap. We're going to go fast and maybe slow down. Mo, help me make sure I'm making sense. But am I making sense so far?
Yes, and I won't be here the whole time. So when I leave, just to ask somebody else to make sure you do not mix things up and just completely go
off the rails.
Okay, I do not know what I'm saying.
I'm gonna try to stay on the rails, but let's get on the rails. You ready? I'm ready. Okay, so This, us, me, Mo said it. Lisa brought us in. We're here. Educate to liberate. What's going on? Man on a bicycle, urban shaman. I don't know what's going on, but I'm going to help you figure it out. Educate to liberate. It is a quote, not mine, but was given to me, or next slide, was given to me by Kent Ford. I was trying to come up with a quote to go in this newspaper that we're going to talk about later, where Mr. Monty gets his shout out. We're going to shout out Mr. Monty again. But I was making the newspaper, and I was asked by the creators, Sharita Garima of Noon Studios, what quote do you want? And I was like, Kent, what quote do I want? And he's like, educate to liberate. And I'm like, is that a quote or something? And he sent me this picture. And I was like, yes, educate to liberate. Kent, educating me, educating you. Educate to liberate. The action is education and deliberation or something. I'm not good with part of speech, but that's what it means. Anyway,
You're not making sense to me.
Come on. Okay, so I'm going to get there, but thank you for letting me know. So did you see any of the Afrofuturist February stuff? You did. So that's why I did that, right? I was like, okay, let's get the education on. Black History Month, thinking about the future. We're going to go future past. I'm going to teach you how to travel through time. You see this, man? This is Jamali Roberts, and he's also one of the mentors at KSMoCA mentorship program. And he made my shirt, which is, I always try to be in costume. You're like, it's the hat. The hat's coming at the end, but we started with the shirt. And you see this little rocket ship? Mo, yeah, got the rocket ship. See, the rocket ship is the rocket ship, right? Afrofuturist February. We're going to space. And you're like, who's this? This is a local activist, Laquita Langford, and her grandmother. And Laquita's doing a project locally, which is actually going to be in the Northeast community, ideally, called the Afro Village. And this is Laquita, and she's working with a team of people at PSU. She's doing the planning, and she's trying to create this future village, which is actually going to use a TriMet car that's been decommissioned, and they're going to redesign it. It's crazy, right? Past,
Yes,
future.
it is.
Yeah, huh? Cool.
Yeah, it is pretty crazy.
We are going to space, baby. So that's the whole thought. It's thinking about the past. And so I learned this morning when I asked my roommate, who, man, it's all there. Kirk actually happened to be the 100th person who liked this, but he's also my roommate, and he's who introduced me to Laquita. And he was like, oh, that's Laquita's grandmother, and Laquita is actually descendant of a slave rebellion. You're like, what's going on? Right? We're collapsing time. It's space travel. Don't worry about it. That's why I invented the Afro Contemporary Art Archive, to put all this stuff so we get the space from now and using the past as like a launching point for the spaceship. You see, the spaceship is going to space. And I already taught this, right? I met with Mackenzie, and we learned about space aliens from Octavia Butler and other stuff, space travel, right? And using education as a tool to crawl into the future. And then we learned about Benjamin Sisko. Do you know Benjamin Sisko? This guy
No.
is canon Afrofuturism. He had a whole series where he was a captain in space. Boom, Star Trek. He was the captain of Deep Space Nine, but there was an episode where he got lost in time and he went back in time and he imagined the future. And that's why I created this drawing, Afro Contemporary Art Archive. He's space traveling. Yes.
That is super duper cool. But I've watched like one movie of Star Trek. One movie.
There's a lot there. There's a lot to unpack. Deep Space Nine, 9 seasons, captain in space. So we also learned about identity expression. We learned that with Lisa Nicole Jarrett, who also introduced us to just now. But I introduced her. That was last time. And we looked at some of the things that Lisa was looking at, right? Images that are in the materials, and you look at the images and you unpack the concepts, right? And so I am looking at things and unpacking the concepts and then putting my own concepts in there and then delivering them to you. So this on the right is Huey P. Newton, and on the left, that's me reenacting Huey P. Do you know who Huey P. is?
Nope.
You didn't read that newspaper. Don't worry about it. I'm going to show you. So Huey P. is a activist from the past. He was the founder of the Black Panthers, which we'll dig into more. But I am kind of copying him, but I'm kind of giving it my own twist. And it's the twisting through time that can help with the space travel. Anyway, this is my first talk, right? So this is a recap just for people who are like, what's going on here? This already happened. You could just go watch the whole thing. But this is how I use the twist. I look in the past and then I'm in the present and I'm talking to the young people, and then time passes and then we go to the future. So the human machine is part of the fuel for space travel, and you got to keep it wellness physically and mentally. And so we did some yoga with Lex Weaver. This is all Afrofuturist February. This is also on my website. It'll be in the show notes. Don't worry about it. But anyway, I did a photo shoot with another photographer. I should have been missing an artwork, but next time. Anyway, I did a collaboration with a photographer named Gabe Williams, and he shot me. He's like, who's this guy sneaking through the earth on this bicycle without his hands? Who's this guy? It's the urban shaman, aka master artist Michael Bernard Stevenson Jr., aka founder of the Afro Contemporary Art class. It's this guy bicycling by. You can barely even see this guy. But what's he doing at Franklin High School? Well, it's in my neighborhood. But also, thinking about, remember you were like, from ages 4 through 18. I'm also thinking about the space travel, when you will travel through time to the future of when you're in high school. And I'm thinking about what you're thinking about then, and we're going to land there if we have enough time. I think we're doing pretty good. But anyway, what are these windows? This is the now, Mo, this is glad you're here. This is a test. So these windows are called French windows. Let's read about French colonial. French colonial describes several styles of architecture used by the French during colonization. Many former French colonies, especially those in Southeast Asia, have previously been reluctant to promote their colonial architecture as an asset of tourism. However, in recent times, the new generation of local authorities have somewhat embraced the architecture and has begun to advertise it. I don't know if we need to read anymore. Do you get it though? You do, yeah. The windows, French colonial. What is French colonial? What is colonial? This is in Vietnam, and we have a French colonial building. What's going on, right?
It's
You know
yellow.
what colonialism is?
Nope.
Wikipedia, let's go. Let's see. Where do we start? Colonialism is a practice or policy of control by one people or power over other people or areas, often by establishing colonies and generally within the aim of economic dominance. Does that make sense?
Yes, but what is economic dominance and stuff like that?
Remember when we were talking about capitalism and you're like, I don't want to say Trump. And then I was like, that's capitalism, it'll get you. And you're like, every time. But it's for the homeless.
Yes, I did this thing in my reading thing, and I was doing something very funny. But I have to go now.
All right. Well, we're going to keep on learning about
bye.
other stuff better than colonialism.
Bye.
You ended on a sad note, but we're going to get watching the video. You'll get to the rest.
Okay, bye.
Thanks, Mo. Anyway, most of you out there might know what colonialism is. This is me smashing it. Smash the patriarchy. I forgot to put a Benjamin Franklin slide in, but we can learn about Franklin on another time. How do I make this window bigger? Now the internet, Mo leaving messed up my setup. Anyway, let me see if I press, oh no, that's not working. So anyway, I did this photo shoot more or less in order to have some slides for this mental wellness experience. Also, if anyone's like, what does Get It Girl mean? This is Get It Girling, just like this on a bicycle. Anyway, urban shaman, master artist Michael Bernard Stevenson Jr., French colonial windows. What does it all mean? We're going there. But first, we're starting with time travel. So this is another event. And again, there's a series, Afrofuturist February. This is just a recap here. We're even going to speed it up through this other recap. But I did a project, or the conclusion of this 4-part series was with plant-based Poppy. We were talking about plant-based Poppy's food, what he kind of puts in there. We were also meeting with Elijah Joseph Turner Nelson, famous artist of the Dr. King School community. And we were talking about time travel. So we were meeting together. We were educating ourselves about food, about wellness, about plant-based food, learning about all this stuff. Juan said he felt sad that he wasn't in space, but man, that guy's flying, that guy. He's in the sky. Anyway, you're like, what is this picture? Well, this is my grandmother and me as a baby, and then me as the urban shaman, and then me as this artist with a food hand, and I'm reaching towards Elijah Joseph Turner Nelson, and he's holding his baby cousin, and between each other, us, is Juan, who's sitting on the shoulder of his grandfather, who owned a shop in Detroit, who, if you know the term sitting on the shoulders of giants, this is how that is being visualized in this collage that I made to illustrate time travel. And that is, I then sandwiched it with the Benjamin Sisko and Imagining into Space. And all of that is Educate to Liberate. Sorry, Mo, you're not here, but to the future you from the past, because you were just here and now you're there in the future, and you're like, ask the question in the past and you're getting the answer in the future, which is your present, but my future. Anyway, this is Educate to Liberate. And Mo, if you didn't get it, you can ask me in the future of your past when we're in the present. But this installation is called Educate to Liberate. One component of this is the Afro-Contemporary Archive. This is it right here. It's at PSU right now, behind lock and cage. And it's this book. It's too much to explain. We're just gonna dive into the books. And specifically this book that I made with the students at King School. Now we're gonna speed up through the recap. You've heard this. The Afro-Contemporary Art class is not a class, it's a project. So it does all the things, and it is also following the footsteps or in line with other institutions, one of which is the Black School. And they had a vision. They're like, we want to do this. Grassroots. We're making it ourselves for us. And they did it. They raised the money. They're going to make a whole building in Louisiana. It's going to be amazing. I'll have to visit. It also is following in the footsteps of things. And this was a part of the Afrofuturist February. So if you want to dig more in, we're just moving on through freedom schools. And the Black Panthers also educating, which is why we're doing with the Huey Putins. We're doing the breakfast program. We're embodying the stuff. We're in the past of now. We embodied the past of before then, and we're launching to the future. So are, and that we did a little hunt. What's this slide? But the answer, it's in the other one and in this one. The Studio Museum was in that little menagerie of shops in New York, or Harlem, specifically Harlem, New York, 1968. But in the present, two BA, femme, totally Black, I believe, curators, Thelma Golden, Legacy Russell, are holding down the Studio Museum into the future. This is happening right now. Black Liberation flag out there. We're doing it. I was thinking about prepping for this, and when I was thinking about colonialism, I was like, yeah, Rome wasn't built in a day. And I was like, Black liberation didn't happen in a day. That's the new phrase. Anyway, this is it. This is the seed pod. This is the first cohort of the Afro-Contemporary Art class, right? We built the archive together. We studied the Black Panthers. We're like, who's the Black Panther? Boom. No, different Black Panthers. And there's a new comic that came out in 2021, the Black Panther Party. David F. Walker, he's in Portland. He's here with us, right? And so he is like me, is like us, thinking about the past and bringing it to the present and shooting into the future. Time travel is going to become the new sliced bread. Anyway, who are the Black Panthers? Some of you might be thinking if you didn't catch all the other stuff, and you probably should know, but if you don't, they're a whole crew from the 70s. Black liberation was their jam. They had 10 points. Look them up because they're still relevant. We didn't do it yet. Anyway, this is how they looked in the comic, right? We're updating it. So it's like, we didn't finish the job. We need to get back to work. And so we need to read the lessons, educate ourselves to do the thing in the future. We're getting to space travel. But, David F. Walker, he's thinking about this before I'm thinking about this, right? Because Frederick Douglass was thinking about this way in the past. And man, if you were really paying attention, you saw that I was sitting on his porch. It's not in this slideshow, but you can look in the past slideshows. They're there. Anyway, Frederick Douglass, we could read about him. You can pause the video. He was a famous abolitionist. He was one of the most photographed people in his time, which I will bring up later if I get there. But David F. Walker also made a comic about the life of Frederick Douglass, which is in the Afro-Contemporary Archive. Also, he escaped from slavery in Maryland and he went to Western New York. And that's where I was born, in Maryland, and I went to Western New York. Am I following some footsteps that I didn't even know until after? Come on, talk about time travel. Anyway, this is a contemporary print by an artist named Zoe Sinclair, and she's again collapsing geographies, times, visual art, collage. It's beautiful. What is the King students doing with this? Studying Emory Douglas, looking at his artwork. We're studying the Black Panthers. We're eating some pancakes. We're serving the pancakes. We met Ken Ford. We studied with Ken Ford to eat gluten-free cookies. And then we're like, boom, we became the Panthers. And I was going to put Zamage's pudding thing in here, but I say it every time. You just got to go back for it. It's so good. And it's in the book. It's in your library when I put it there. Anyway, we invited everyone to the thing. Black History Month. A year ago, we did it. We studied the past. We learned in the present. And we copied the past into the present. And we organized. Black Panthers, what are they doing? They're also organizing, right? So after the event, kids had to go back to class. Fortunately, you are getting the download now. Oh, I forgot to put the screenshot of the email. It's going to be okay. But we organized, right? As a community, we got together. We did work in your neighborhood, which is happening with the Afro Village. It's happening in other ways. Actually, on Earth Day, we're going to do a community cleanup. Kirk, he's the guy I was talking about before. And I was like, man, I want to get that in there. But it's just emails. But they came in this morning. It's happening. We're going to plant some plants for you. It's going to be great. Yeah, it looks like the past. Is this from the present or the past? Who knows? It's all the same. Organize. And then I also wanted to talk about Fred Hampton, maybe at a future time in my own life. I really haven't even had a chance to unpack it. So maybe it's not time. But man, did that guy really bring people together? Been thinking about that. Anyway, we were all there, right? All the people. Lisa was there. Dana was there. Dana took that photo from before. Zamaj was serving it up. Not Zamaj. Azariah, sorry. Serving just like the past. We were a class. Gracie got to put her hand on the rail. She loved that. Anyway, past, present, future, Ken Ford, we are doing it. This is just a recap. You know this. You're already doing it. And how amazing does it feel? Yes. So this is where we're going to dig a little bit deeper, a little bit more new content. This is like, okay, we're on the KSMoCA platform. Michael, what have you been doing other than giving us these crazy presentations? Well, I also have been making a crazy newspaper in collaboration with Sharita and Garima of Noon Studios, which is also a part of the Black Art Ecology of Portland. We were hyped. We were like, let's get this into your classrooms. Why? And when I was asking Mo those questions, and he was like, I don't know who Huey P. Newton is. Well, if you get the newspaper, which you have, because I know you have it, it's in there. It tells you. And this page is also fun. We wanted to get it in there. It was a rush job. But we're glad we made it in there. I haven't had a chance to talk about it with anyone. I'll talk about it with you right now. Who's that guy on top? Dr. MLK Jr.? Yes. Who is this? Yolanda and Lisa putting up the sign, welcome to MLK Jr. What's the history? You know the history. This is where we are digitally, actually, physically, or something. Anyway, that other guy was Raphael Warnock, who excitingly, right at the same time as the newspaper was reaching your homes, more or less, was elected as the first Black senator in Georgia. And it's like, yes. It's funny to even say. It's like, yes. And it's also like, is that crazy? But it is crazy that it's crazy. And you're learning about it now. You're educating, to liberating. Mo. Anyway, who's Raphael Warnock besides just some guy? Well, no one is just someone, but also he is a pastor just like Dr. MLK Jr. And guess what? At the same place in time, space continuum, the same room. The guys are in the same room at different times for the future. And now this is like the bedrock, right? And I'm going to read this whole thing because the website had so many steps. And, sometimes you just go to, Wikipedia because it's easy. But sometimes you go to the Afro Contemporary Art Archive because you're looking for something specific. So I was like, what is Stacy saying in her own words of a whole team of people. Stacey's leadership. In 2010, Stacey became the first woman to lead either party in the Georgia General Assembly and the first African-American to lead the House of Representatives. As House Minority Leader, she has worked strategically to recruit, train, elect, and defend Democrats to prevent a Republican supermajority in the House. What does that mean? Man, you got to do a lot of reading. Anyway, and has worked across the aisle on behalf of all Georgians, which is even good for me because when I start talking about Fred Hampton, we're going to be linking the idea of hanging out with the young lords in the streets to reaching across the aisle. It's too deep. There's not enough time, but good thing we're traveling through time space. It's going to be all right. Anyway, Georgians, during her tenure, she stopped legislation to raise taxes on the poor and the middle class and the rollback reproductive health care. Mo, that's capitalism. She has brokered compromises that led to progress on transportation, infrastructure, and education. Educate, liberate. Most recently, she passed legislation to improve the welfare of grandparents and their other kin raising children and secured increasing funding to support these families. This is one paragraph. The website was full of stuff. Jeez. And building infrastructure like Laquita Langford right in your own neighborhood. It's crazy. It's all happening. And talk about it in your neighborhood. Did I plan this? Yes. Stacey Abrams, Teresa Rayford in your own neighborhood. These are artworks by Rachel Mulder, who was commissioned for free. She gave us them. In fact, she's doing some fundraising, selling the Stacey Abrams print. She's giving some money to Stacey Abrams. She's giving some money to us. She's working in the team. I love it. Teresa Rayford ran for mayor. This is all in your newspaper. It's in your own house already. You're like, what is he saying? Pick it up and read it. It's like a picture book. It's beautiful. Anyway, Mr. Monty, shout out. I couldn't go inside. Schools weren't open yet. So he took it. He smuggled it inside legally. And then he gave it to be packaged and distributed to the homes of every student while they're at home through the internet. I'm from here. Mo was like, what's this? Is this a green screen? No, it's a green plant. It's a red screen, but from this place, I'm growing up into your own house and doing it. We're doing it together. I love it. Educate to liberate. You got to get some action. So we learned about the mayor stuff. We voted. We were disappointed that even though we voted, reality happened in the past, but no one even knew what happened. And so it was new for them in the future of the past event. And it's okay because the elders been done working and we ain't just gotten started working yet. So it's going to be all right. Anyway, we distributed this information also to our elders so they knew what was going on. This is Ken Ford, like, yes, man, if I had a fan, it's that guy. And also, this is us at JP Frame Shop. Frame, I mean, it's actually part of the next slide, maybe. Working with JP to frame some stuff, been up there, hanging out. It's a whole thing. Educate to liberate. Mo, this is your answer. The whole presentation before now is to hear, to say, yes, we are getting the information from the archive, which is really a word for a room full of books, and you go in the room and you just touch the books and you put them in your mind, and then you come out and you're like, liberation, I'm ready. And by then it's been done like 10, 20 years. That's time travel, baby. Anyway, this idea, so it's like, Mo's like, geez, your name is so long. I'm like, Mo, I understand too, but it just rolls off the tongue. Master Artist Michael Bernard Stevenson Jr. It's MAMBSJ. You get it. It's just, you just got to give it a minute. It's like learning a new language. And I understand that too, because as a neurodiverse human, as a person who was once a young person, like you're a person, and then you're like, go into the archive and they're like, hey, take off your shoes and don't speak loud. And you're like, what's happening? You got to learn all the stuff. And then when you do, you can put your stars in the constellation of other people's information and stuff. And so this is Educate to Liberate, the installation. Man, I wanted to do, it's already happening. This is the Educate to Liberate talk about Educate to Liberate, the installation, which also I want you young people to know, it's here first. It's always been here first. Here, and it goes to other places, but it starts right here in the school, the elementary school. Anyway, This is also artwork by artist Roshni Thakur, who is currently in this moment, the same present as now. They're doing it now. They're having a colloquium about anti-racism in schools, education, so they can rend the earth from the bad minerals, and then they can plant new seeds. It's all about time travel, but we don't have enough time for that. We're just looking at this time travel. 1968, Huey P. Newton. Who's that guy? Just rewind the video. 2021, master artist Michael Bernard Stevenson Jr. reenacts the original Huey P. Newton with his own components. In fact, I'm going to explain it here. I meant to put some slides in there. This is a sketch slide. When you get it first, it's rough cut. But this is a social distancing stick. I made it. I hand-hewn it with tools. And the wood used to belong to the barn of Huey. No, I'm sorry, not Huey. Ulysses Grant, former president, old dude. And I shaped it, and it also has bowling alley floor and leisure, but that's a whole conversation. I gotta explain the gaze. We just talk about G-A-Z-E, gaze, not, that's the one. And so anyway, the stick was to keep us safe, not like Huey P's spear for the stabbing. So, and this is a toy gun and all the stuff. There's too much in here. It's the whole, if we're talking about collapsing time, boy, it's really in there. So I don't know if we can go all the way there, but time travel. Anyway, it's even deeper, right? So now, oh man, it's a good thing we're only halfway through. I'm gonna take a beverage. Hold on, beverage. Okay, this is for Mo. So you got colonialism, and then you have revolt, and then you have Huey P. Newton, the whole time, capitalism, whole time. And then you have the other stuff in the middle that I explained. And then you have me and David F. Walker and the future of the Black Panthers from the past, fighting capitalism to the present, and then Urban Shaman. So that's how you do it. Anyway, it's all mixed in there is really the point. It's all together. And really, if we're talking about educating to liberating, this is how I spent my yesterday night, whatever day it is. I was invited to provide some cultural sensitivity analysis to a presentation that was actually fascinating and I didn't know about. It is aligned or occurring at the same context and moment in time as the Vanport flood. This is a housing complex, which was a World War II housing complex, and there was like Russian trains, and I was like, Russians were our allies, and I was like, geez, I gotta go find Alien to understand what's going on. But this was a housing area that had a segregated region that was also mixed. However, they were shipbuilders, and then when there was a flood, they also got flooded. And so these little circles of red are both referencing segregation, but also Gloria, who happened to be there, is kind of amazing, is like Ken Ford, who was actually there at the time. And she kept saying, like, I was a child. I really don't know what happened, but I'm learning it through time travel. She had to get old before she could know from the child. Anyway, I'm learning too. And that is how you become the art, right? And so Mo was like, is your hat your art? Which, sorry, Lisa, I burned the question, but maybe you can ask later if you're like, what did you even mean? But see, this is me with my Kirkland hat, and I'm becoming the art as I explain the art into the internet with these people of positionality, of power, just me, the master artist, Michael Bernard Stevenson Jr., and my plant and my art. And this is what the red screen is for. It sort of works, but to become the next future time computer through the internet, you gotta use the red screen. And if you just want a regular background, you gotta get a green screen. But if you want to become it, red screen it up. You're like, Crooklyn hat, why? Crooklyn is a Spike Lee joint. Spike Lee is a director, filmographer, Black creative, and he loves the Knicks. That's what the color combo's from. And where are the Knicks from? And Crooklyn and Brooklyn, New York, which is actually where my mother is from Canarsie. It's the end of the L. You're like, what is this guy speaking? It's a different language. Don't worry, it's time travel stuff. All you got to know is Spike Lee joint. And like, what's Spike Lee joint? Another one is called She's Gotta Have It, which is a very interesting show. And there's this character, Mars, with whom I well identify. Anyway, and the color scheme is just primo. And the show is also about Nola Darling, who is an artist. And the show actually is also time traveling, talking about a lot of contemporary artists, which is beautiful. And we are doing great on time. Lisa, you better have some great questions. I killed this in speed, but not in timing. Afro-contemporary art class, maybe this is where we'll go slow. And Lisa, if you want to like enter through the door, you're welcome. The Afro-contemporary art class at Jefferson High School we're now really being practical about time travel, because at the same time that I'm talking to the young people you're listening, I'm also talking to the older, younger people who are also learning and educating and liberating. And this is similar to the Get It Girl moment where I was bicycling by the Franklin School monument, which is directly in my lived neighborhood. But I also enjoy traveling to North Portland, which was a historically Black region, and working with the students of that region, which you are, and so are the students at Jefferson, who, through no grand form of consensus, but rough consensus, decided they were done with the Jefferson legacy, which I love. And this is now just their work. I wish I either had time and or believed that I would have enough time before in the past when I was trying to figure out how much time I had in the present, but we're doing great. We studied other Afro-contemporary artists similar in maybe a less hasty fashion. And then one of the exercises we did was to reenact their work, to unpack these symbols and understandings within the images. Like when I was showing you, I became Huey P. Newton, and I was like, there's too much stuff in here. It's kind of like that. And we looked at that stuff and we're like, well, what really is in here? And then we pulled the stuff out of it and we did it onto our own selves. And so this was an artwork by Asa Whittier, who reenacted Lorna Simpson, a Lorna Simpson artwork here, and is also, we're working on, the high school and I and Amy Hargrave, who's the art teacher there, we're working on taking these images that I'm about to show, and some we're still generating and compressing them into a book, because that can go into the archive and also travel through time into different space-time continuums. Anyway, and this is a perfect example of time travel. Wow. So this is a nameless woman. This is Lorna Simpson. And this is Carmina Flores. And essentially what we're seeing here is not just time travel, it's also ultra contemporary art, because it was contemporary before this part, so it's double. This diptych, which means two, is Lorna Simpson found a cache, an archive, if you will, of images of this young woman, all of them kind of like her posing in front of the camera. And so Lorna Simpson reenacted the photos that this other woman made original from the past in Lorna Simpson's present. But in my present, which is Lorna Simpson's future and present, because she's somewhere influencing me in her present from some stuff she did in the past for me to help you into the future. Carmina, in the past of now, re-photographed her mother, which she described specifically as a strong Black woman, and wanted to show the legacy of the three, right? That's high school stuff. They are thinking it out. If I was a DJ, this would be air horn time. one day. This is Demir, and what's going on here? It's too deep, right? I'm going to tell you because we got the time, but this is a photo on the left of a gentleman who was a part of Dred Scott's slave rebellion reenactment. And I was kind of trying to play a trick on the guys in the school and all the people of the different genders. And I was like, when do you think this photo was taken? And they were like, 1912. And I was like, no, it's from 2020. Because they just used black and white film to document this contemporary event. And when I showed them this work and I offered them to do the reenactment project, Demir had this photo of him that he took in the past of even receiving the assignment and submitted it from the past, in the present from the past. And I was like, genius, why would you take another photo when you have this one already? That means you're just working with what you have. It's so good. And it was perfect because this is him sitting on the plinth that Jefferson was sitting on, right? Sitting on the past, the shoulders of the past. Black liberation. I love it, Demir. Good idea. So we looked at also pictures from the past of Jefferson. So this is from the Jefferson archive of students. Amy Hargreave found these and she was like, I love this. And everyone's like, whatever, what do you do with these? And boom, you give them to the kids. They're not kids, they're young people becoming adults, looking at the past, thinking about the future. It's time travel, everyone. Thinking about studying in the contemporary COVID times, it's kind of similar, but with a mask. And, even reminiscing on a not so distant past. So this is Courtney, again, taking a photo from her personal archive during a time in which they couldn't be in the school because it's closed. But they're coming to the school soon, and boy, teachers are getting ready. But right now, they're not. And so this photo she submitted after editing and making black and white to reenact this brilliant platform, shoe-wearing, kind of disco fever, furry jacket having guys, got a little beret beanie situation, maybe a Kangol, hanging out from the past in the future. Is in the past, hanging out, and it's come to the present. Courtney saw it, reenacted it from the past and present. This is in the Afrofuturism ones, we really go into it, like it makes sense. In this one, because Mackenzie explains it, it's like, does that make sense? She's like, yeah, the past, present, future for you? Yes. And I was like, great, I did it. So Mo, if you need some help, hang out with Mackenzie. Anyway, this one was really cool. It wasn't what the assignment was, but the young person colorized it. And I was like, man, I'm getting old. What does that even mean? And so, yeah, I took the photo and put it into the future past. I don't even know, but it's going to be the cover. Such a good idea. Anyway, and we studied, contemporary artists. This is Shannon Wallace on the left. And then I did a presentation and we gave kind of the assignment. And this guy, Ian, was in his house hanging out with his brother. And he's like, do you want to do this? And he's like, I'm stronger than him. And he's like, boom, let's get out there. Reenactment, done. I love it. It's like art making itself over here. Barrett, this is the side of Jefferson. This is the street of Baltimore. Receiving a phone call, decline. And then it's interesting. My presumption is that students needed grades. And so there's some things that arrived after my own awareness. And this was one of them. And I was like, heck yes. Evelyn M. This is another Shannon Wallace photograph on the left. Another Shannon Wallace. And this was made by Elias, who, if you're thinking about the future past, look at that photo on the right. Are they the same person? They are. How do they do this? I have no idea. I'm too old for this. I just let the kids do it. This is Rhea reenacting a Carrie Mae Weems. You got the phone, you got the computer. People be calling your computer while you're doing a presentation. How do you turn that off? I don't know, Apple. Owen, looking at a historic photo from Jefferson's past, looking at the present. Dad had this hat. Boom. Get the assignment done. Make it look chef's kiss. You learn the basic skills. You'll be an artist before you know it. And then you can time travel. It's really that simple. Leslie, looking at some skirt action. Super interesting to see that the culture of the high school remains with flappy dresses. That's probably why they have the emoji, to keep the flappy dress alive. Donovan, this is a Devin Allen photo, which I still haven't prepared, but hopefully I get that job and I'll be able to teach Afro-contemporary art to the college students. Devin Allen actually has like a super dope deal with Under Armour, and he's got his own shoe. He's probably the only artist that has his own shoe by the company. It's too good to be not known, but you probably have no idea what I'm talking about. But Donovan over here getting the cloud action. He loved the textures. I love it. And there's a lot of comparisons going on. We could look at this for days over here. What's going on in the background? Too much for here. But also for folks who don't know much about the East Coast, Shannon Wallace and Devin Allen are both Baltimore artists, and they both have much love for that city. And dissimilar, in a similar fashion, there is housing in Baltimore, similar to the way that there's housing in Portland. And in Portland, we've got these big kind of like multi-facaded boxes that honestly, I'm architecturally attracted to in their material use, but boy, am I not a fan. And gentrification, redlining, and gerrymandering, they're in that newspaper. You're like, what are you talking about, guy? Check it out, check it out. But in Baltimore, they have these kind of row house situations that are brick, and they were all kind of made by hand, and all the stoops are stone. And I had an idea for a project where I went by and power washed them all. It would be so good. It still can happen, but they keep tearing them down. That's why these are in the images. And that's why it's super deep, thinking about like West Coast, East Coast, peace. It's too much. We don't have time for it. Amira, thinking of the similar thing. Clouds, texture, that looks like a young person thinking about time travel again. This is another Devin Allen. And then we went back to the future past. We got Gordon Parks, Olivia punching it up with Muhammad Ali. Who's Muhammad Ali? Google's got that one for you. Don't worry about it. And then boom, Malcolm X. We got, it's just the time travel. So this is a student. This is the student's mother. Portland Observer, 2021, Martin Luther King Jr. We got over here Malcolm X holding up a newspaper. How do they get a contemporary newspaper with Martin Luther King Jr.? Because he's time traveling. He's in the present. He's from the past. This guy traveling. Anyway, there's a way with your hands, with your mind, with your art hands, with time travel skills. You can look at things from the past because it's black and white. You know it's from the past. Hank became Hank. I love it. This is also another youth work, Charlie Bullock. You couldn't tell because they're like so the same. And I just had to. I had to with this one. There's more than you're seeing, but you'll have to get the book when it comes out. It's going to be the 2020-2021 art yearbook at the high school. It's coming. It's coming. Don't worry. This is what we're doing right now with them. I was able to get this slide. Mo was introducing me. He was like, K through 12. Master artist Michael Bernard Stevenson Jr. is doing it. And I was like, I'm doing it right now. Right now. Anyway, these are just came through on the internets. This is a collage. We're talking about collage with the high school students now. And then this is Shan Wallace Artworks. And I apologize even for the failure to identify all of the artists. So this is mirrored. Shan Wallace did a documentary on, dance hall culture, ballroom culture. This is a photo of an elder from the community. And this is a flag that was made by a Baltimorean who was photographed by Devin Allen. And this is a famous Devin Allen photograph that he made during the time of the uprising in Baltimore after Freddie Gray. And, he got the cover of Time. And so we talked all about this. We talked about all of this. So it's full of the layers and the constellations, which I didn't even bring up, but come on, man. Chloe, good job. 10 points for Gryffindor. And then over here, these are Deborah Roberts collages, who is a contemporary collage artist, and Jonathan A. collaged some of their artworks into this Shannon Wallace, which again, I apologize for the failure to identify that this is a Shannon Wallace photograph of one of the kind of ritualistic spaces after someone passes away, and putting the characters into the field. And I haven't gotten to talk to Jonathan A., but boy, is this deep. We've got this young man who was wrongfully incarcerated and then euthanized, sitting on the fence. There's a whole story there in the Deborah Roberts artwork. We got another character from the artwork Ghost Gun with this toy gun that was actually a painting in the collage, thinking about young boys being seen as older than really they are. And then in the foreground, we have this boom, powerful pose. It's called Man Lee, and it's probably, I haven't deep dove, but my assumption is that this actual head belongs to a young girl, knowing about Deborah Roberts' work, and that these lips seem quite feminine. This eye is actually a James Baldwin eye, pew, like a hawk, that guy looking. And then you got this popular boom Muhammad Ali pose, which is actually also, again, a painting, though I do know of Deborah Roberts' fascination with Muhammad Ali's hands, keeping it fresh. So weird collapsing time over here. This is Afro-Contemporary art class, past, present, future time, into the present at KSMoCA, just trying to, and the hat. You keep my head warm because the steam comes out. Anyway, check.
Thank you, Michael. I've been laughing like an hour straight, and just so much joy. You bring so much energy and joy to your presentations. We appreciate it and love you so much. We have a few questions for you before we wrap up for today. God, I can't stop laughing. Like, there have been tears of laughter happening for me here. Yes, thank you so much. I did want to follow up with a question from Mo about the hat, because you told us lots of great things about it. But Mo is really curious if the hat helps you concentrate while you're making your art. So I think he was wondering, do you wear this when you're creating work? And does it actually help you concentrate?
That's a really good question. Do I wear this when I'm creating work? Yes, almost all times, even sometimes during sleeping. It's interesting. This was the sponsor of maybe our last event, and this is made by Dungeon Forward. It's a Black-owned company, and they created this cool little design so you can get your pen in here, keep your pen handy while you're arting around. So it is definitely tactical. And then I have my third eye hat, and so when you're trying to, make the art, you got to be seeing out of your third eye. So these different hats, they help me channel different aspects of my persona, but also the hats unto themselves have meaning unto themselves. And so it's all about space travel. But if you go back in time, the orange hat was actually just something I wore to keep my head warm. And so I'd be like, man, it's cold because I don't have any hair anymore. And then I'd be like, I'm distracted. And then when you have the warm hat, then it's really good. But sometimes it's too warm and you need to pop the ears out. And so that also helps with the concentration. So it's different stuff. But also sometimes it's conceptual.
Maybe Amanda got it. Oh my goodness, really nice. I think Mo will appreciate that. Thank you for answering that question. Mo had another question that he had to jump off before you were able to answer, but he was wondering, when you were kind of talking about capitalism early on in the presentation, he was curious about what economic dominance is. Mm-hmm. Do you have any thoughts on that?
Boy, have I been thinking about that for a good long time. And if you've seen any of my other presentations, I've like sprinkled receipts into the screen. Yeah, and that's another kind of reason for the master artist Michael Bernard Stevenson Jr., that kind of like complicated term, like how are you entering this economic world? And so there are systems, and I think I touched upon it a little bit in the presentation, but in some ways the Afro-Contemporary art class as a philosophy is really thinking about what's done to resist the system as it exists. But the system or systems exist in a way where people who have greater amounts of power are working to hold on to more, or to build, or to grow, or to even present it as being shared to other people when they continue to have most power, which in past versions of things have described that as like trying to play tag and someone's creating all the rules and you're like, man, I really can't win at this game. And so that is happening all the time, and I think happening to everyone or most of us. And I think specifically as an artist, I am often thinking about it as it applies to me as just a regular human or other humans, but also how it applies to the way that I live or want to live or make work or be paid for my work, which, you know, most of the things I presented, boy, did I do it for free. But I'm interested in time travel, and fortunately, time travel doesn't need a lot of money, but some. And so, yeah, there's, I guess the power is not interested in time travel. It's interested in stay in time in the past. And even though we move through time, they're like same rules, same game. And so that's a primer on economic dominance.
Thank you, Michael. From Mo, I'm sure that he'll love hearing that answer. Amanda, I think, has a few other questions to share with you.
I have a two-parter. So the first part is, how did you realize that you could time travel? And then the second part is, how does young Michael, like pre-master artist Michael, like exist in the time-space continuum of your work with young people now?
That's an interesting question. And later I'll have to figure out who asked it. But I feel like the first question, probably the answer may be lost in time, but the answer that came to my mind was, I think it surprised me. In fact, I remember the moment well. I was presenting with Mackenzie. There's a whole thing on it. Again, it'll be in the show notes. It's on my website. The Afrofuturist February was 4 parts. It was like 4 hours of like, how do we time travel? And the first one, I was like going back. I was talking about the freedom schools, and I was talking about the other stuff, and I was going back and forth, and I was past, present, future, past. That's where that came from. I like made it up on the spot. I was like, I don't know what's going on. And then I was like, Mackenzie, does this make sense? And she was like, yep, I'm following right along. And I was like, whoa, okay, we're doing it. I was like, this is my greatest work ever. We're going from Black Panthers to Benjamin Sisko. We just collapsed time. We went to the future from the past, and I'm standing right here in my own bedroom, and we're doing it. And so that is, I think, but I had been ruminating about the spaceship. I've been building the spaceship in the mind. I already had the shirt. I was like, how do we gas it up? And I just kept putting gas in there and building and putting gas. And then Mackenzie took us to space, and now we're all going along. So that was, how did you first realize you could do it? And then what was the second part? Oh, how does young me?
Yeah, like how does young Michael fit in the like work of, or the journey of, and your work now of education and liberation with young people in the time-space continuum?
Yeah, I remember telling someone once that it occurred to me at some point that the person who I was perceiving in that present, which is my past, was the same person as when I was a young person, and that I just am that consciousness like in the future, and that the same kind of wants and interests that I didn't well understand or have command over, but the same ache in my knee or whatever, I love jumping, those things stayed. And so perception of time, or the present, also was an avenue to seeing through time. And also, like, more recently, as I'm studying more history, I'm like, wow, this stuff totally existed when I was a child. So what's present then with me, and like I'm in the future, and I'm like seeing that stuff, and I can triangulate myself in the past to the things I now understand, to where I am now and what I'm doing. And I'm like, and that's when Mo read my bio, I was like, in the past, I thought this was a good idea, and it still is. And so there's some thoughts I'm losing, but there was one analogy that when you asked that I wanted to bring up is actually a Harold Fletcher analogy. He once told me that he was looking at the clouds, and at some point in the distant past realized that the clouds will always be there. And so still in the present and the future, that thought space exists, and maybe that's a freezing of time, but is some form of using perception. This was the analogy I wanted to bring. Gerard Edezel, who's an art history professor who inspired me when I was studying art, taught us consciousness at the beginning of an art class. And I was like, what does this mean? And so it is the space of consciousness that allows all the different stuff to happen, whether it's time travel or any other magic that a person's mind wants to conduct.
Thank you so much, Michael. Thank you. I wish we could have played together as children. I feel like that would have been hilarious. I can imagine.
The street lights would have been on. We would have been
I
in
love
trouble.
jumping. Yeah, I mean, I just feel like we would have been great playmates.
We'd have been staying out past the street lights.
Yeah, I think there would have been a lot of capes. Somehow I sense capes in this imagined past that is also our future.
Sticks. I love sticks.
Yeah, I love sticks too. I do. There's some real resonance here. Anyway, always a pleasure to hear from you. Thank you for sharing your work with the KSMoCA community. Looking forward to continuing to help build that archive and making it as accessible as possible to the students at Dr. MLK Junior School. To everybody out there, thank you so much for joining us this morning. We will look forward to seeing you again, same time next week. That's 10 a.m. Pacific Standard Time. For Sahela Azadi, her third presentation in the lecture series for 2021. If you want to take a look or revisit Michael's presentations over this year, you can find those on our YouTube channel. And if you can't find them on YouTube, you can get to them through our website, which Amanda manages so beautifully. It's our archive for the KSMoCA project. And I think that's everything for today. Thank you to Harold, Amanda for both being here. And Michael, we'll see you on the next Zoom. I think we're all
headed to the same place. We're in different places, going to the same place. Space-time is just collapsing over here.
Beautiful. We love you.
Thanks, Michael.